Well, it certainly sounds like some people are ready for a political revolution. Let me thank all of you, not only for being here today, but for the enormously important work you do day after day, understanding that New Hampshire plays a unique role in the political process. You are fighting not only to improve the lives of people in New Hampshire, but people all over this country, and thanks very much for what you do. When I announced my candidacy 4.5 months ago, I think it is fair to say that a lot of people did not take our campaign terribly seriously. That's fair to say. But it is also fair to say that in the last 4.5 months, change has taken place. What looked like a fringe campaign is now seen as a campaign that is standing up for working Americans and is prepared to take on the billionaire class.
We love you, Bernie!
It's not just that all across this country we have drawn some of the largest turnouts in our rallies. It's not just that we have over 400,000 people in this country who have made individual contributions to our campaign. And let me say a word about that. You're looking at a candidate who does not represent the agenda of corporate America, who does not represent the agenda of the billionaire class. And I stand before you today to say loudly and proudly, I don't want their money. I don't want a super PAC. We're going to do it on our own. I understand that when you have a super PAC, you can walk into a room of millionaires and billionaires and come out with a heck of a lot of money. I get it. But we are going to do it a different way. And we're going to raise our funds from working people averaging $31.20 a piece, and I'm proud of that. And let me begin by telling you about an old song, reminding you about an old Union song. Some of you remember it. Which side are you on? Remember that song? Now, you're very lucky because I'm not going to sing that song to you. I can't sing, as some of you may know. But I grew up in a working class home in Brooklyn, New York. We lived in a 3.5, some transplants here, all right? We grew up in a 3.5 room rent controlled apartment. My family never had money. But I knew from a very early age which side I am on. I am a proud progressive. I am proud to stand with the working families of our country, prepared to take on the powerful special interest which wield incredible power over our economy and our political life. That is what I did yesterday. That is what I did 25 years ago. That is what I'll do tomorrow. And that is what I will do if elected President of the United States. And let me also take a moment to tell you something that no other candidate for president will tell you, or perhaps ever has told the American people. It is a simple truth, but not widely reported. And that is, no president, not Bernie Sanders, not anybody else, can bring about the enormous changes we need to rebuild our crumbling middle class, to do all of the things we have to do for the elderly, for the children, the sick, and the poor. We cannot do it. No president can do it alone unless we have a political revolution, unless tens of millions of Americans are prepared to stand up, to get actively involved in the political process and make it very, very clear that this great country and our government belong to all of us and not just a handful of billionaires and campaign contributors. So I am here today not just to ask for your help in winning here in New Hampshire, in winning across the country. If we are going to transform America, we need millions of people to stand together, to take on corporate America, to take on Wall Street, to take on the big money interest. That is what this campaign is about. Let me tell you something else. Some of you may agree with me and some of you may not. But in my view, the Republicans did not win the last midterm elections. We lost those elections. The American people didn't vote for a party that wants to give huge tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires and cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, nutrition, and which does not even recognize the reality of climate change. That is not what the American people voted for. But what happened is we had a voter turnout that was worse than abysmal. Millions of Americans looked out and they said, you know what, not for me, I'm not going to vote, I'm not going to participate in the political process. We lost that last election because voter turnout was low and because all across this country, people are giving up on American democracy. So let me be very clear. In my view, we will not retain the White House. We will not regain control of the Senate. We will not gain the U.S. House or be successful in dozens of governors' races across America unless we are the party which generates excitement and momentum and enthusiasm and which produces a huge voter turnout. Democrats win when the voter turnout is high. Republicans win when the voter turnout is low. Our job is to make that voter turnout sky high. And how do we do it? How do we generate the excitement on the ground? How do we get those who are disillusioned back into the political process? How do we get young people involved? How do we get working class Republicans to stop voting against their own best interests? And with all due respect, that will not happen with politics as usual. The same old will not likely be successful. The people of our country understand, of course, that we are much better off today than we were when President Bush left office and we were losing 800,000 jobs a month and the world's financial system was on the verge of collapse. Of course, we are much better off today. But they also understand something else, that yes, we're better off than what we were under Bush, but they also understand that for the last 40 years under Democratic and Republican presidents, the great middle class of this country, once the envy of the world, has been disappearing. And all over New Hampshire, all over my state of Vermont, all over America, despite an explosion of technology and worker productivity, you got millions of people working longer hours for lower wages. You have people in my state and your state not working one job, working two jobs, working three jobs, just trying to cobble together an income that will sustain their families. And today, we have almost more people living in poverty than at any time in American history. And what the American people understand, and what we cannot run away from, and what we have to have the courage to address, is that while the middle class continues to disappear, and while people work longer hours for low wages, almost all of the new income and wealth that is being generated is going to the top 1%, and that has got to end. Very few people in America, no matter what their political views are, believe that it is morally acceptable or economically sustainable when 1/10 of 1% of the American people have more wealth than the bottom 90%. Very few people think that it is acceptable when you have people all over this country working so hard, long and crazy hours. Parents can't stay home with their kids because they're working so many hours. And yet 58% of all new income generated today is going to the top 1%. That is not the economy we need. We need an economy that works for the working people of this country and not just the billionaire class. We need a political movement which is prepared to stand up to the most powerful people on this country and to create a government. I know this is a radical idea, but imagine having a government in Washington that is not controlled by large campaign donors and corporate America, but which represents all of us. We need a political movement in this country which takes on the economic and political establishment, not one which is part of it. We need a movement which tells corporate America and the wealthiest people in this country that, yes, they will start paying their fair share of taxes. That multinational corporations are not going to continue stashing billions of dollars in profits in the Cayman Islands and Bermuda and other tax havens while children in America go hungry. Ain't gonna happen anymore. No, the CEOs of large corporations are not going to continue to receive huge compensation packages and incredible pensions, while at the same time they cut the wages and health care and pensions of their workers. Not going to continue to happen. And no, we are not going to continue to have disastrous trade policies like NAFTA, CAFTA, or permanent normal trade relations with China, with corporate America shutting down plants in New Hampshire, Vermont, all over this country, moving to low-wage countries, bringing their products back. We need trade policies which create jobs in America, not just in China. And by the way, that means that together we are going to defeat this disastrous Trans-Pacific Partnership. We need a political movement which tells Wall Street that when a bank is too big to fail, it is too big to exist. I understand the power of Wall Street. I really do. I've stood up to them for a very long time. But whether they like it or not, we will reinstate Glass-Steagall. And we will create a financial system whose job it is to make affordable loans to small and medium-sized businesses so we can create jobs in America, not a financial system as currently exists, which is an island unto itself, only concerned about their profits. We are going to break up the major financial institutions on Wall Street. When we talk about the economy, all of you know that throughout this country, there are millions of Americans who are working for wages which are just too damn low. In my view, the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is a starvation wage. We have got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour over the next few years. And I hope that every man in this room will stand with the women and fight for pay equity for women workers. There is no rational economic reason why women are earning 78 cents on the dollar compared to men. And when we have pay equity for women workers, when we raise the minimum wage to a living wage, millions of mothers will then be able to raise their kids with security and dignity, and they deserve that. I know here in New Hampshire, you see a lot of politicians tropping through your state. You're suddenly a very popular destination. And you have heard many Republicans talk about family values. You ever hear that? Oh, they just love families. But you know and I know what they mean by family values. What they mean is that the women of America should not have the right to control their own bodies. I disagree. And what they mean by family values is that our gay brothers and sisters should not have the right to marry. I disagree. I've got 4 kids, 7 beautiful grandchildren, and Jane and I have been married for 27 years. We believe in family values, but our values just a little bit different than Republican family values. We believe that the United States has got to end the international embarrassment of being the only major country on earth, only one, that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave. It is not a family value to tell a working class woman who has a baby that she has to be separated from that baby in a week or 2 weeks after birth because she has to run back to a job in order to earn income to sustain that family. That's not a family value. That is the opposite of what a family value is. And that is why I will fight for 12 weeks paid family and medical leave. Brothers and sisters, here's the truth about unemployment. Real unemployment is not 5.1%. That's official unemployment. Counting those people who have given up looking for work and are working part-time, real unemployment is over 10%. And let me tell you something of huge consequence which very few people talk about, and that is the tragedy of youth unemployment. Here are the facts. Real youth unemployment. If you're a white kid, high school graduate, 33%. Hispanic, 36%. African American, 51%. We need a major jobs program to put our people back to work. And the fastest way to do it is to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our rail, our airports, our water systems. And let me tell you something else that I feel passionately about. The United States of America today has more people in jail than any other country on earth. It makes a lot more sense to me for us to be investing in jobs and education for our young people than jails and incarceration. I want us to end this distinction of having more people in jail, and I want to replace it with the distinction of us having the best educated population on earth. And when we talk about politics, let me simply say this, and I think most of you know it, is that today the campaign finance system that we operate under is corrupt, and it is undermining American democracy. Corrupt is the right word. When the Koch brothers alone can spend $900 million on this election cycle, more money than either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, brothers and sisters, we're not talking about democracy. We are talking about oligarchy, and together we are going to overturn Citizens United. You know, I am likely the most progressive member of the United States Senate, and I'm proud of that. And it goes without saying that I have, very large areas of disagreement with my Republican colleagues. That's obvious. But there is one area that goes beyond a disagreement, and it goes to an embarrassment. And some of you may have seen it just the other day, the other evening at the Republican debate. The scientific community is virtually unanimous, no longer a debate. Climate change is real. It is caused by human activity. It is already causing devastating problems in America and around the world. And our Republican colleagues are prepared to reject science. And that is a dangerous situation for the most powerful country on earth. And I will tell you something else. It's not that these guys are dumb. It's that they get their money from the fossil fuel industry. And they are more worried about their campaign donations than their kids and their grandchildren. That is a shame. We must lead the world in transforming our energy system, working with China, Russia, India, and we can do it. We can move to energy efficiency and sustainable energy, and for the sake of our kids, that is exactly what we have to do. And when we talk about American needs, there's something beyond comprehension for me. I don't understand it. I don't understand how in an incredibly competitive global economy, hundreds of thousands of bright, qualified young people are unable to get into college only for one reason, and that is their families lack the money. That is crazy. That is counterproductive to the future of America. And that is why I have introduced legislation and will fight for, as president, to make every public college and university in this country tuition free. It is not a radical idea. It is common economic sense to say that when young people or people of any age need more education, They should be able to get that education regardless of the income of their family. And that legislation also deals with the travesty that millions of Americans are experiencing today in outrageously high student debt and outrageously high interest rates. Now, to lower interest rates on student debt and to provide free tuition at public colleges and universities, that is, in fact, I admit it, it's an expensive proposition. And I will tell you how we're going to pay for it. We're going to pay for it based on a tax on Wall Street speculation. The middle class of this country bailed out Wall Street. Now it's time for Wall Street to help the middle class of this country. And when we talk about bringing our country together, it is not just the need for major criminal justice reform. I do not want to see kids' lives destroyed because of mandatory minimal sentencing. I think it's time we took a hard look at the so-called war on drugs and the lives that have been lost as a result of that. I think it's high time that we make sure that when a police officer breaks the law like any other public official, that officer will be held accountable. And when we talk about creating the kind of nation we want to become, we cannot forget that there are today 11 million people in this country who are undocumented. In my view, we need comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. You are looking at a senator and a former congressman who did not believe what George W. Bush or Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld were saying about Iraq and who voted against the war in Iraq. I heard the evidence. I heard what they had to say. I didn't believe it. And if you go to YouTube, or go to my website, go somewhere, and read what I said back then, and I'm not happy, doesn't make me happy to say this, but much of what I feared would happen in terms of the destabilization of that region did happen. So what we have got to understand, and I speak to you as the former chairman of the Veterans Committee, someone who has and will continue to make sure that our veterans get the health care and the benefit they need. But also someone who has spoken to hundreds of veterans and learned something about the cost of war, the terrible cost of war. Not just the 6,700 brave men and women who died in Iraq and Afghanistan, not just those many who came home without legs and arms and eyesight, but about the 500,000 men and women who came home with post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury, and the tens of thousands of families that have been disrupted in a way that they may never recover from, and the children who have been hurt, and the divorces, and the suicides. Anybody who does not understand the cost of war should not be in the United States Congress. That is why it astonishes me, and it really hurts, to hear many of my Republican colleagues talk so easily and loosely about getting into another war in Iran. The President and Secretary Kerry have worked long and hard for one simple goal, and that is to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and that is something we must do. But what they have put together is a process and an agreement which allows us to accomplish that goal without going to war. And I hope we all support that. Let me conclude, and I've probably gone on too long, and I'll get yelled at by somebody, but let me conclude by begging you to do one thing, and that is think big, not small. Do not get into the argument of whether we should cut education by 2% or 4%. Do not get into the debate about whether climate change is real or it's not real. What I want you to think about is what we in the wealthiest country in the history of the world can accomplish. Please do not tell me that in the United States of America we cannot join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to all people as a right. Which is why I support a Medicare for all single-payer system. Do not tell me that when we have a massive level of income and wealth inequality, that the United States should continue to have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any other country on earth. Please don't tell me that. Please don't tell me that when mom and dad go to work, that they should not be able to find high quality and affordable child care. And please don't tell me that the United States cannot lead the world in transforming our energy system and combating climate change. We could do that. Brothers and sisters, we can create a nation in which every man, woman, and child, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of the country they came from, regardless of whether they are gay or straight, man or woman, we can create a nation which fulfills the birthright of all Americans, and that is a society of dignity, of security, and ending all forms of discrimination. Thank you all very much.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.